Peace, peace, peace. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you who don't know, it's your boy Vic Slay Hope, and I got another video for y'all. And today we're going to be covering another law from the 48 Laws of Power. And this one is law number 33, discover each man's thumbscrew. Before I read the judgment, like I always tell y'all, if you like my content, make sure you like the video, make sure you share it, and make sure you subscribe to my content. The judgment says, everyone has a weakness, a gap in the castle wall. That weakness is usually an insecurity, an uncontrollable emotion, or need. It can also be a small secret pleasure. Either way, once found, it is a thumbscrew you can turn to your advantage. Now, all the laws in this book kind of like work together to get to the establishment of power, right? But to me, in my opinion, some laws are more important than others. That's just in my opinion, right? And this law is very, very, very important. So if you are somebody who is interested in really achieving power, or just trying to protect yourself from the people who are trying to deceive you and wish you harm or do certain things, then you need to pay attention, because this law specifically speaks about your weakness and how to find the weakness in people so you can exploit them, right? So I'm going to get into that. Because the book gives you 6 strategies on how to find people's weaknesses and what kind of weaknesses they have, because some people are weaker than others. You know, weaknesses come in degrees. So I'm going to get into that. But you have to have a plan of action, right, when you go into trying to find people's weaknesses. And see, we live in a world that is, when we resort to the laws of human nature, everybody is working to self-preserve themselves. Self-preservation, right? That's like the #1 rule. So people will kill you to save themselves. People will steal from you to feed themselves. People will do whatever they have to do to you in order to preserve them. So that's just the laws of human nature, right? Self-preservation. No matter how nice you are, when it comes down to you or me, it's going to be you. And this is what a lot of people operate under. I don't care what you believe. It's just the facts. Like, somebody will snitch on you to save themselves. That's just how it is, right? So anyway, we live in a world that is people are constantly trying to get over people. They constantly trying to manipulate people. They constantly trying to harm, kill, do whatever it is to people, or get over, right? So as we do that, we love to try to protect ourselves from our weaknesses, because we all have our weaknesses. Some of us know our weaknesses, others don't. So what we do is we create this armor where we try to protect ourselves, because we want to hide. We don't want people to see our weaknesses, because of course we're going to become vulnerable, right? So we don't want that. So because it takes a lot of energy to try to protect yourself all the time, especially as the more people we interact with, the more we talk to people, the more vulnerable we become to somebody finding out what our weaknesses and exploiting us. So it takes a lot of energy, and as it takes a lot of energy, you always fuck up. This is why when the police interrogate people, they always keep talking to you. The more you talk, the more you are liable to fuck up when it comes to your weakness. So I'm gonna give you the 6 principles that they gave in the book, as to how do you find people's weaknesses, right? So #1, it says pay attention to gestures and unconscious signals. And one of the quotes from Sigmund Freud, which is the so-called father of psychology, it says, no mortal can keep a secret. If his lips are silent, he chatters with his fingertips. Betrayal oozes out of him at every pore, right? So the point in this is this. This is why I like to communicate in person with people, right? Because when you talk to people, people could be saying something out of their mouth and their body language is saying something different. You ever notice when people be talking to you, they making a nasty face? People can't realize that they're making a nasty face because they're not looking at a mirror when they're talking to you. But you notice that they're making a nasty face. That's why sometimes when you even tell people fix your face, they might tell you like, what are you talking about? Because they don't realize that they are subconsciously making a face. They don't realize that subconsciously their body is communicating. And this is why I say your body can't lie. The body doesn't lie. It don't matter what you say out your mouth. I pay attention to people's body, like he said in the book, the fingertips, the eyes, the wandering eyes, right? Some people can't even look you straight in the eye when they're lying to you. So this is a kind of like a sign, right? When they start looking around, they fidgeting, They're making faces, they're tapping their feet, they're doing certain things. It's letting you know certain things about these people, right? So you got to pay attention to the gestures, the unconscious signals. Don't pay attention to what they're doing consciously. Pay attention to the other things that are going on around as they're communicating to you. So this is one of the ways that you can kind of like try to figure out, or at least it will let you know that they're kind of like trying to hide something as they speak, right? This is why when I talk to people in person, I kind of like could tell when something's not right, because you're trying to hide because you're doing all of these other things. Another thing, it says, find the helpless child. Most weaknesses begin in childhood before the self builds up compensatory defenses. Perhaps the child was pampered or overindulged in a particular area, or perhaps a certain emotional need went unfulfilled. When he or she grows older, either the indulgence or the deficiency may be buried, but it never disappears. So a lot of our traumas, a lot of our issues, a lot of our weaknesses come from childhood. Like in the book it said, if you was deprived of certain things in your childhood, you grow up wanting those things. You have a need. If your mother never loved you a certain way, you grow up to try to find that love in other women, right? If you're a young man, like you try to find that love in other women. As a woman, they try to find that love in some man. So young childhood traumas, when you grow up, you can tell is a weakness because they have a need. They grow up with a need. Another thing is if spoiling somebody is almost like a weakness too, right? Overindulgence in certain things becomes a weakness too. When you grow up, you kind of like want that. It might not necessarily be spoiled, but I always say don't mess with a spoiled woman because she expects that, right? But anyway, the point is the need, right? Children that grow up with a need, they usually require that from people. They usually, they grow up and they require that from people. And when you realize that their inner child is coming out of them constantly, right? And you get to a certain point where you should have outgrown certain things, but when you realize they haven't outgrown it, it's because it's part of their weakness. So this is something that people usually exploit when they know that you're needy, right? Usually being needy comes from childhood, from being neglected as a child. Another thing that they talk about is look for contrast. For example, people who are overly talking about one thing all the time, they're usually trying to hide that they usually feel the opposite. It's just like the tough guy. The tough guy that bangs on his chest and tries to make you believe that he is tough is usually a coward, right? Just like women. The women who always talking about, I'm a bad bitch, I'm cute, I'm this, I'm bad, I'm etc. They're usually trying to mask up and cover up an insecurity that they really don't think they're that cute, that they really don't think they're that bad. You know, kind of like the same thing happens. And that's just with a lot of people who always like fake ass alpha men. They always throwing around that they're an alpha. And in reality, you're not. Because a person that is really what they claim to be, they don't feel like they need to keep saying that. They don't feel like they need to keep proclaiming that. So a person that continues to just throw that out there is because you're really trying to convince me. It's almost like a dog that barks a lot. You know, the little dogs, they always barking, right? But they don't really got no bite behind it. And when you get close to them, they tend to run, right? So the whole bark is just to try to act like they're tough to keep you at bay so that you don't come close. It's the same thing. Look for the contrast, because usually how they acting is usually the opposite. The next thing is find the weak link. Sometimes it's not about the specific person. It's part. For example, when you're trying to take down a crew, if you got a problem with a crew of 4 people, and they have one leader, right? Usually, when you can't get next to the leader, you get next to the weakest link, because the weakest link will lead you to the leader. Cops use this when they do gang takedowns. They know who's not gonna snitch, and they know who's going to snitch. So what they do is they prey on the weakest link in order to get the leader some jail time, right? Because the leader might be thorough. He might not snitch. He might hold it down. And then they might have you might have a few members who are the same way, but there's always a weak link amongst the ranks that's going to tell on everybody and destroy the organization. It never fails. And so that's a weakness too. It's not your weakness as the king or the ruler or the leader, but even he has a weakness. And sometimes you got to prey on the weakness. Maybe he like girls. You know, they got the saying, I heard he like pussy, have the home girls line them. So if I know the king weakness is girls, I'm going to get next to one of his girls that is weak, and I'm going to prey on her or I'm gonna feed her whatever her weakness is in order so I could get next to him because I know she's his weakness, if that makes sense. The next thing is says fill the void, right? Two main emotional voids to fill are insecurity and unhappiness. The insecure are suckers for any kind of validation. As for the chronically unhappy, they look for roots of their unhappiness. See, these are two of the most emotional voids to fill, right? If somebody's insecure and somebody is unhappy, it is very, very hard for these people to hide this type of weakness, right? Because you can see it. Somebody who is unhappy, you can see it. This is why one of the laws is avoid the unhappy and the unlucky, because you can clearly see it. And those people, they start to infect you, right? But when you know somebody is unhappy, and once you find the source of their unhappiness, or when you know a person is insecure, and once you find the source of their insecure, like, you can control them, you can manipulate them, right? And this is why I tell the brothers, get rid of your insecurities, right? See, women, it's kind of harder for women because they have so many insecurities, right? They don't like their titties, they don't like their ass, they don't, if their feet too big is a problem, they don't like their weight, they don't like their teeth, they don't like their forehead, like they don't like their hair. It's so many problems that women have when it comes to them, right? So they have so many different insecurities. So they're always gonna fall victim to being preyed on. That's why I say it's easier to manipulate women than men. Now, men, on the other hand, they don't really have too many insecurities that you can prey on. So it's not a lot of weaknesses there. Men usually have like 3 insecurities, and I say this all the time. They usually are insecure about their money. They usually are insecure about their penis size or their sexual performance, right? And they usually are insecure about status. Comparing them to other men and so forth, their manhood, or telling them that they're not men enough. So they don't have a lot, and maybe their hairline, right, when it goes receding. But they don't have a lot of issues when it comes to certain things. They don't really be caring about how their body look. They don't care if they fat. They don't care if their toes are black or they got corns. They don't really care about a lot of these things, but they care about those 3 things, which is why every time you get into it with a woman, she always gonna say, if you broke, just say that. If you gay, you know, they like throwing the sexuality stuff in there too. They like calling you gay, and they like talking about the sexual, or you never pleased me, you never gave me an orgasm, or your penis little, or comparing you to other men. So these are the things that they try to prey on men for their insecurities, right? But we don't really have a lot of them like them. So it's gonna be harder for them to kind of like hide their weaknesses because they got so many of them, especially when it comes to insecurity and unhappiness. The last thing is feed on uncontrollable emotions. The uncontrollable emotions can be a paranoid fear, a fear disproportionate to the situation, or any base motive such as lust, greed, vanity, or hatred. People in grip of these emotions often cannot control themselves, and you can do the controlling for them. So people that have these intense emotions, right, of lust, greed, vanity, and hatred. Lust, for example. A lot of men go out their way to do all type of shit for women, just for the name, just for the sake of lust, of lusting over a woman. This is something that has happened throughout centuries. Men have gone to war. They have killed people. They have destabilized countries. They have done a whole bunch of shit in the past just in the name of women. Just in the name of women, of lusting over some women. So when you have these intentions, when you have these emotions, right? Greed, we see it all the time. Men are greedy, right? Billionaires, what they want? Another billion. Millionaires, the same thing, right? It's in the chase of greed. It's an intense emotion. Vanity, right? To feel an excessive praise of yourself or the things that you have accomplished. And hatred is a very, very strong feeling as well. So when people are feeling these things, a lot of times they don't have no control over these emotions because they are very intense, which is why men will go, like I said, to the largest extent over a woman. A lot of times back in the days, also, men used to get set up, like in the hood. A lot of dudes got set up by some woman. And this is just a prime example. If a dude know you like pussy so much, and what men don't like pussy? And that's the thing. So men used to use a lot of women back in the days to line other dudes up to kill them, or to rob them, or to do a lot of foul shit to them. Greed is another thing that you can use, vanity and hatred. So again, these are the 6 things that were said that you can use to kind of like prey on people's weaknesses. I know it's crazy. I'm not really gonna go over the examples because I feel like the video is already long enough. But like I said, like I encourage y'all to get the book. And the reversal of this law is just when you playing. And again, a lot of the reversals of this law is usually death. A lot of them. A lot of these laws, if you get caught playing these games, it could cost you your life. And with this thing, it's the same thing. When people realize you're preying on their weakness and you did it on purpose and you was manipulating them and you was conniving, it can lead to, you could stir up an action that you cannot control. People, that's why, like, when you messing with people who have childhood trauma, or or maybe they have mental issues, and you preying on them and you playing with them, if they catch you, it could be a fatal attraction moment. So just beware, man, that when you practicing a lot of these laws, and depending on who you playing with, it could cost you your life. So let me know what y'all thoughts are. Like, comment, subscribe, share. I apologize for the lengthy video, but it's a very, very important law, because you need to be mindful of your weakness and be mindful that people are always trying to exploit it. So, peace.